Disrupt Health. I am your host, Julie Palumbo, and today we have back Matt Dewar of Journey 30K. And today he is going to elaborate a little bit more about mindfulness, but how it is important in the lives and performance of athletes. So welcome, Matt. It's great to have you here again.
Julie, thanks for having me back. Excited to be here.
So how did you get interested in working with mindfulness and athletes? How did this all start?
So about 2 years ago, I got certified to teach mindfulness in schools and started implementing mindfulness programs within my own district and in other schools, and working with kind of educational leadership teams all around the area, et cetera. And at some point, our swim coach at our high school said, "Could you do mindfulness with our swim team?" And I said, "Absolutely, that would be awesome." And immediately it took off.
Wow.
The kids loved it. And then I started doing more sports at my particular school. And then from there, started working with a college in our town, worked with their football team all season, was on staff with them. And then I'm also on starting to work with their basketball team.
Oh, nice.
And then one of my younger brothers is in the MMA, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu scene. And so I've been working with some athletes in that domain as well.
Wow. So why is it important for athletes to be focused on this and to train their minds?
It's important for athletes for the same reason that it's important for just a non-athlete. And that is we seem to create unnecessary suffering for ourselves and diminish our capacity to respond to the moment when we mismanage our attention. And the thing about being an athlete is, in day-to-day life, you can maybe get away with mismanaging your attention and no one's going to notice. But when you're an athlete and you're on the field or the court or whatever your respective sport is, those lapses in attention are really noticeable to everyone. So the link between what the moment asks for and how you respond is so tight in sports that lapses in attention, again, become really apparent. And so for athletes, it's essential to be able to, you can't control or master necessarily the circumstances outside of yourself, but you can significantly control and master your internal environment through attention, working with how you pay attention to the details of your perspective or particular sport.
Yeah. Well, I know that I've read several articles about big time athletes like Tom Brady, Michael Phelps, Tiger Woods. They all practice mindfulness, and it has changed their career, just like the amount of focus that they require and the way that they channel their inner thoughts has really made an impact on their success. And I mean, all these athletes are well into their career, like they pretty much all are nearing retirement or should have already retired, and they're still excelling, I think, because of this.
Absolutely. They often talk about how there's three dimensions of preparation in sport. There's physical preparation, there's tactical or technical preparation, and then there's mental preparation. And when you look at most athletes, even at the highest level, they're doing the first two. They're not really doing the third. And if you ask athletes, which I often do you believe that training the mind is vital to your performance? And they'll say yes. And then I'll say, how do you systematically do that? And they have no idea. And what I often hear from athletes is they'll say, well, I just try to make practice really, really, really difficult so that when I get into competition, I'm over prepared. And that there might be something to that. I just personally don't think that's a sustainable strategy. That tends to shorten careers of athletes when they're just abusing themselves in practice just so they can get a little bit of an edge potentially in competition.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Now, is this similar or the same thing as sports psychology?
Awesome question. No, I think it's very different. And I'm going to generalize here, and some sports psychologists might disagree because they don't do this. And I would say if they disagree, it's because they're the minority and not the majority. I think what sports psychology does is it tries to artificially create certain states associated with performance. For example, confidence and calm typically are two states that you'll hear athletes saying they hired a sports psychologist to help them become more confident, and or basically just to get rid of negative emotions and to bolster positive emotions. And I think where mindfulness is very different in this realm is that it's not trying to create a particular kind of state. What mindfulness is doing is helping you understand that regardless of what you think and feel, you can still pay full attention.
Okay.
And that you don't have to be. I was working with a kicker at the college that I was working with, and we were talking, and he had this aha moment. We were on the field. It was at the beginning of the season, and I was having him walk me through his progression when he sets up for a field goal. And he said something to the effect of, and I've heard this a number of times from athletes, how do you stop yourself from being anxious? How do you stop yourself from having negative thoughts when you're about to do whatever? And I said, whoa. You're not responsible for what you think or feel. You're responsible for what you do. And he was like, so I don't have to make myself not feel anxiety. I said, absolutely not. You can just simply notice the anxiety is there and then pay attention to your progression. What is it that you need to pay attention to kick the field goal? And so what mindfulness brings to light with athletes is coexistence with negative thoughts and feelings. That you can't always feel confident. You can't always feel calm. And that every feeling, positive or negative, has its place when it's in an appropriate context. You're better off, though, spending more time worrying about what's the next actionable step within your control to pay attention to. And I think when you see athletes at the highest level, elite athletes, I think the difference is not in physical ability. It's not necessarily in strategy. It's the ability under duress to just pay attention to what they need to do next, regardless of how they feel, regardless of what the crowd is saying or doing, or the noise or the gravity of the moment. That's another thing I shared both to the quarterback and the kicker, because those are really important positions, is there's no such thing as a big moment. There's just moments.
Yeah.
And every moment is just an opportunity to execute. And sometimes moments you feel amazing. And from that amazing place, you go to execute and you don't. Even though you had all the right thoughts, all the right feelings, and you don't. And sometimes you are just, anxiety is tearing at the edges of your awareness. You have lots of negative thoughts and you still execute. So the point is, it doesn't matter what you think or feel. Focus on your progression, control what's within your control, and that's it. Next moment.
I love that. And I feel like that's so applicable to anyone's life, not just
Yeah.
athletes. And so many times we let our nerves get the best of us. And I love your take on that. It's not a big moment. It's just another moment, another opportunity. And I think when you look at it like that, it kind of offsets not even the nerves, like maybe you still have that, but it makes you think a little more clearly about the situation. And then you could just do what you're supposed to do. Whether
Yeah.
that be in the boardroom or on the field or in front of the classroom, whatever it is, I think that is a really good takeaway from all of this, to really channel it that it's just another opportunity. It's just another moment.
Just another moment to pay attention to the moment.
Yeah.
And when it's over, what's the next moment? That's it. And a lot of athletes will get into the habit of, I'll say, would you walk around all day with a backpack full of bricks? It's the third question. And they're like, no. And I said, well, when you come off the field after making a mistake and your shoulders are rolled forward, you're swearing at yourself, you go over, you rip your helmet off, etc., the play's done. So don't bring it with you.
Yeah.
It's always next. Always next. What's next? There was a Japanese psychotherapist named Shoma Morita, who lived over 100 years ago, and he had this saying. It wasn't a saying. It was kind of like a series of axioms, and I share this with athletes all the time. Accept your thoughts and feelings as they are. Know your purpose. Do what needs doing. And if there's any mantra that you need, that's it.
Yeah.
Accept your thoughts and feelings as they are. Know what you need to do. Do it. Execute. So anyways, yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like I need that on the back of my wallpaper on my phone so I could see it. I got to unlock it, just to like rechannel that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So are there any misconceptions to mindfulness? I know you just kind of addressed one, that it's not the same as sports psychology. So is there anything else that maybe is out there that you feel is a misconception of this?
There are many, and too many to address in this limited time frame. But I think the most significant one that's recurring is that mindfulness is a technique for eliminating negative thoughts and feelings and creating positive thoughts and feelings. And mindfulness is a technique for relaxation. And so sometimes, working with fighters and working with big football players, and both those sports are really violent and rough. And so mindfulness seems like, why would I want to relax when I'm ready to go into a game and try to tackle someone who's 230 pounds and 6'3", right? And so it's not either one of those things. Mindfulness is the practice and process of continuously paying attention to the details of the present moment. And what happens as a result of that is that you step outside of what is called the place in the brain. It's called self-referential processing, and it's a part of the brain called the posterior cingulate cortex. And when you're talking to yourself about your experience, they've noticed in fMRI imaging that this part of your brain lights up. And what they've found is that when the posterior cingulate cortex is lit up, people tend to it's associated with less happiness, but it's also associated with more, with a sense of having to put more effort into your actions. And so what mindfulness allows us to do is to shut off that, not shut off because that's that sounds like, again, like it's a trick or a technique. Over time, the practice of paying attention to the present moment seems to deactivate the activity or downregulate the activity of the posterior cingulate cortex. And it allows people to more freely react or respond to what's happening in the moment. And if you're an athlete, even if you're a person, we all know this, when you're lost in your head, it's no fun.
Right.
I used to have a basketball coach who would say, paralysis by analysis. I was a shooter, and when I was on, I was on. And when I was off, I was off. Right? He would say that to me, paralysis by analysis. And he was right, because I couldn't let it go. And with every missed shot, the internal dialogue would start becoming louder and louder and louder until I'm sitting there. It's external at some point. And that's what you see when people or athletes are starting to melt down.
Yeah.
The volume of that internal dialogue is going way up. And so mindfulness is this practice, again, of shifting attention away from the ongoing narrative that you have in your mind to the present moment. And we seem to feel and perform at our best to the extent that we're outside of our heads and actually paying attention to the present moment. And so whether you have negative thoughts or feelings, I think you could actually explain it this way, is that the more you pay attention to thoughts or feelings, whether they're positive or negative, the more your attention gets tangled up in internal states. And the more your attention gets tangled up in internal states, the more those internal states are going to dictate your course of action. And that leads to that's a recipe for inconsistency in terms of execution in life and on the field or court or whatever.
Yep.
So mindfulness is learning to kind of untangle attention from those internal states and allow it to open up, so you're actually in contact with more and more of the present moment.
I love that. I really am, like, my wheels are turning in my own head thinking of how many ways this could be applied, to my own life, and how much I wish I had known this years ago when I was an athlete. And there's so many times that your nerves, people say your nerves get the best of you and you almost get in your own way. And this is the perfect way to kind of navigate that and not choke and not let all of that anxiety kind of hold you back from what you're destined to do. So I think this is such valuable information. And before we wrap up, can you tell us one big takeaway that you want us all to kind of get from this conversation?
Practice. Practice, practice, practice. End of story. It works. If you sit down and you take time every day to practice, it's transformative, and it's transformative to the extent that you practice. I've recently collaborated with an organization called the Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully, and the head of it created this Commit to 1% campaign. Her name's Tracy Heilers, and the average person is awake 16 hours a day. So 1% of your day is 10 minutes. So just commit to 1% of your day to practicing mindfulness, because everyone articulates how important the mind is in sports, in life, and how every thought, word, and action reflects the quality of our minds. We should then be able to take 10 minutes a day, 1% of our waking hours, to practice and to work with attention and to notice how it gets tangled up and how to untangle it. And I don't know that there's any life skill more important than that.
I agree. I completely agree. This
Yeah.
was awesome, Matt. I love the knowledge that you shared. I love how, we could take this and apply it through so many ways. And for those out there who, whether you're an athlete, on a co-ed kickball team, all the way through the highest level, this could be applied to whatever task you have at hand so that you're excelling and really, not letting yourself get in your own way.
Yeah. That's exactly it, is that often our biggest opponent is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for being here again. To everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I'm Julie Palumbo, and this is Disrupt Health, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.